keeps rolling, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I'll call the May 9th meeting of the West Dakota Water Development District to order. And the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the roll call of the members. Dan?
The roll call for May 9th, 2023. Cole.
Here.
Durkee.
Here.
Driscoll. McGregor.
Here.
Ackerman.
Here.
Rowe. Mack.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
Carr.
Here.
And we have two absent. We have a quorum, and that means majority vote will be 4, 2/3 vote will be 5.
Correct. Yep. Thank you. All right. The next item is the approval for today's agenda. Any changes to the agenda before we vote on it? Seeing none?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ron. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion? Second by Craig. All right. Discussion on the motion. Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the March meeting. I hope everybody had a chance to look at them. Are there any additions or corrections that anyone saw?
Move their approval, Mr. Chairman.
All right, moved by Scott for approval. Is there a second? Seconded by Dennis. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Can I get who the second was?
The second was Dennis. Going too fast for you?
Oh. I know we all want to get out of here.
Well, you got to practice. So. Item 5, conflict of interest disclosure. Are there any items on today's agenda that any of the board members would have a conflict of interest on?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know that it's a conflict of interest, but we're going to talk about Medicine Mountain Scout Ranch. I'll let everybody know I am an Eagle Scout.
That should work. Excellent. So that means you're voting yes on anything?
What year and where?
Vermilion in 67.
Okay, you got me beat.
Congratulations. Both of you guys.
If we're going to talk about that, I am the Citizenship of the Nation Merit Badge Counselor for the Black Hills Council for their Merit Badge Midway. Don't get any financial benefit of it, but just so that my name may be on some paperwork somewhere in the council office. So just wanted to cover that. I don't think it will bother.
Okay, thanks for that.
My name's all over that paperwork in that council office too for many
I wasn't
years.
sure if that was a joke.
I wasn't sure. Half and half. Half and half.
All right, so no conflict of interest. The next item is the treasurer's report. Dan?
Okay. Bring that up here quick. So tax revenue, and I got to double check this, but we've got $22,825 to date. And I won't go through every item here. Savings and, okay, the projected tax revenue based on our levy request will be $242,443. And our actual money, we have in savings and checking, $121,086. And then we have a 6-month CD at $126,000, and another 6-month at $126,000, and a 3-month at $250,000. So that's essentially the principal. So there's some interest that's going to be accrued on those that I don't list here. which gives us a total of around $623,086. The non-project expenditures to date are $15,909, and the project expenditures to date are $50,731, for a total of $66,641. And if you look at our budget, we have $166,235 left in the budget. The tax levy request, which we will be voting on probably in August, with CPI and growth, the maximum we can ask for without an opt-out is $249,756, so that will be for next year. The projects are all listed here. We have some money that I paid out for the greater part, about $3,000. There's some of it's not on here because this was done a few days ago, and I've paid some since then. But the bottom line is our unpaid liabilities are $280,261. So if there are no questions, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any questions for Dan on the treasurer's report? I'll entertain a motion for approval. Robert, motion made by Robert. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Seconded by Ron. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Dan?
Okay, I guess I was going to mention, next meeting, we're gonna have to make a draft budget, and so we can start thinking about that, and just as something to look at. I passed out this year's budget, so the numbers on there are for this year, but for next year, we'll have to do something similar. And it's slightly confusing, but that's the way we've been doing it, and it's an accepted method by the state of South Dakota, so I just kept doing it the same way. But kind of gives you an idea. In particular, we need to decide what projects to put on that. And in the past, we've only listed projects that we were fairly sure about, that they were already approved, or we're pretty sure they're going to be approved. And then we have a line item that says unobligated project funds. And we add up the whole budget, so the projects plus all the admin and everything, and subtract that from the tax levy that we expect to request, and that's the unobligated projects fund. So we have a perfectly balanced budget every time. Budget is non-binding, but it gives the public an idea of what we're doing and kind of directs the board to think about what they want to do, what their goals are. So I don't know if we want to discuss that at all anymore.
You gotta go to work for the Congress and balance our budget.
It's easy
How many
to
years I've been trying to do that?
Yeah. Anybody want to comment on next year's budget? I guess not.
I'll just say, starting going in, I see no reason to opt out
Okay.
on property tax. We get more than we need just normally, so.
We need to decide that at our August meeting, all right?
Yeah,
Because we have to submit it to the state by what, the end of
by
September?
the end of September.
Yeah,
But you kind of need that number to make the budget,
sure,
so
yeah.
that's what, there was one year where we didn't request the maximum amount. I think we only requested
So
200,000.
when we went backwards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Well, that's basically just the default amount, not really the maximum amount, it's the default amount.
Yeah, correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
So
it's the maximum without doing.
when I say that, we went less
I
than the
know.
1 year
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Then Tom and I were here. I don't know if anybody else was here. I don't
I
know.
think it was just you
Just
and
you
me.
and I at that time, yeah. Anything else,
So
Dan?
there's, yeah, and then there's Of course, there's the joker in the deck, because we don't really know what the admin is gonna be doing, so
That's true.
I guess that's another.
We'll be talking about that a little bit later here.
Nope, that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7, yeah, we were talking about CDs, and we got one coming due here on the 15th of this month, $250,000. So Dan and Ron have been looking into what we should do here going forward with that CD. So Ron, you want to jump in here? And
Yeah, so on page 9, it shows that 3-month that we've got right now with Raymond James. It comes due on the 15th, which is next Monday. We have $250,000 in there. With our accrued interest, I think we'll be up around $257,000 on that total. And so Raymond James right now, as of this morning, is offering CDs for 6 months at 5.1 and 12 months at 5.15. That usually wiggles around a little bit by the day, but that's kind of a general indicator of where it would probably be next week when we would be potentially renewing it if we go with Raymond James. Dan checked with Community Bank, where we have our regular, savings, and a money market fund and some checking, and for our ready cash, and they'll pay us 4.75 for 6 months as of today, and 4.0 for a 12-month CD. The lady that we've been dealing with at Raymond James seemed to suggest in the message this morning that it was kind of their feeling that, because of that really close relationship between right now what's a 6-month and a 12-month, that they think that we might be getting closer to what might be an interest rate that we would see for the future, or the top end or whatever. So she said, just let us know what you want us to do. The only difference, I guess the differences are, is that we won't receive as much return from the local bank. We do have to pay a 0.025% fee when we initiate a CD through Raymond James. So that's about $625 on $250,000. So I guess I'm thinking that we need to do the best we can, in terms of getting interest on the money that we are carrying in CDs, and would recommend that we either go with a 6-month, or maybe because these rates are potentially going to wiggle, we go with a 12-month for ease of administration with Raymond James. It's only 0.5% more, but it might be easier for administration in terms of rolling these over every 3 months, essentially, the way they're working right now. In either case, we would probably have to split them, because we have, with the accrued interest, we'll have over $250,000 to invest. So we either going to invest that into a CD and split them, like we did with the 2 6-monthers for $126, so that we don't break the threshold of $250,000 for the FDIC insurance. Or we could roll that, accrued interest into our checking account or business savings account, but you can see the rates that we're paying there, so I think it's probably a better move in
Are
terms
these
of...
actually insured?
What?
Are these actually subject to the FDIC insurance getting
Yes.
through Raymond James?
Yes, they are. That was one of the reasons that we felt comfortable in doing it, is that they're all insured under FDIC, even though they're invested in all kinds of different, potential places where they find these rates.
Yeah.
They are FDIC insured, if we don't break the $250,000 cap. So just like, at a bank.
Yeah.
Well, even if we break the cap, we're still insured up to the,
Well, we would be,
We
yeah.
just have $7,000, $8,000 that wasn't insured.
Right, but I guess if we want to maintain that, assurance that we have FDIC insurance, that's why we broke the other one into 2 pieces and left the accrued interest, to stay with it.
So do you think we ought to go a year on this?
Given that we've, the rates are very similar, and they're saying that we might be looking at some kind of a stagnation in terms of rate increases, because this is the rates after the Fed just acted. Now, that's not to say they won't act again,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think we should just go for the year and make it easy.
On the fee that we pay to them, that $600 and some you were mentioning,
Yeah.
is that the same for the 6 month and the same for the 12? So
It's .025. It's whenever they rebuy.
so
to us.
it doesn't
So
matter
we-
what the term is then?
No.
Okay.
Same term, same fee that we pay, so we actually are a little bit ahead if we do
Go with
decide
the
to
year.
go with a 1 year.
Yeah.
So we don't have to roll it, in 6 months.
Yeah, we don't have to pay another fee again.
Right.
So it would really, that'd be half of that really
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
If you take a 6 month,
Right.
each increment, 6 months.
So I guess to me, that's the easiest thing to do with the best rate.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we repurchase a CD from Raymond James for 12 months for this 3-month CD that's coming due.
All right, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Dennis. All right, discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pull the same sign, motion carries. Thanks for Dan and Ron for doing that work on that. Appreciate it.
I didn't catch the term, is it 12 months or 6 months?
12 months.
12 months.
Where's Raymond James located here in town?
They're on the second floor of that big Interstate Bank building that's right on the corner there. It's on Omaha and
West Boulevard.
West Boulevard. Yeah.
I was kind of confused with Edward Jones. Which seems
Yeah,
to
no,
be
they're on the
all over
second
town.
floor.
All right, so the next item is a grant request from Keystone. We have a representative here. I've talked to her on the phone a couple times. She's gonna,
And thank you guys very much for,
Move this microphone a little
oh,
bit. for
sure.
you.
identify yourself for the record too.
So it's in the minutes.
So it's in the minutes. correct?
Okay. I'm Sandy McLean. I'm the current board president of the town of Keystone. And I've been the president maybe 2 or 3 times in the 16 years that I've been on the board. So probably out of everyone, I have the most history with the community as far as what has been done. And I know that some of you had some concerns about the grant and the comparison to the mission statement. And so what I did, and sorry, I was not an English teacher, I was an art teacher for 35 years. So basically, I may have some typographical errors in there, but bear with me. I was doing it quite quickly so that I'd have a document that you could review. Why it's very important for our community. Our community is probably, in comparison to any other community in the Black Hills, is that we are an opt-out community. So everything is contingent on the sales tax revenue. If we have a bad year, we cannot succeed. If we have a good year, yes, we can move ahead. We have many infrastructure projects that are going on in Keystone. And recently, within the last couple months, we lost our big grant because we removed a bridge. And basically, that bridge, according to FEMA, and this is what kind of got us a little bit into trouble because the request was not made through FEMA. And the bridge was taken out. So the no-rise condition on the bridge canceled, and you had to start from zero. So now we have to go all the way back. We had to give up the big grant, which pays for that bridge, which is going to be several millions of dollars. And we're a small community, so several millions of dollars is a huge loss. And what I did on this sheet, and if you can kind of follow along with me on the sheet, I listed your mission statements at the top, and I feel like we have talked about those mission statements in one way or the other in there. And if you are confused, please ask me, and I will go ahead and review that with you. But basically, what I just talked about here is the main problem with our community. You really cannot compare it to any other community in South Dakota because we are the only opt-out community in the state. And it puts it as great when you got great years, but when you don't have great years, and already Keystone is down 60% in revenue in the first couple months. So that'll kind of give you an idea. We don't spend that money until the following year, but it'll tell us what we'll be able to afford. Water has become a highly important issue in our community. We had a well go dry, and so we had to drill for a new well. The most that we could get on that well was 35 gallons per minute. That is very small, you guys. And so that cost us, and it was paid with the state grant, that cost us a considerable amount of money, almost $1 million for that well. Now, so we had to rethink our strategy with the water, and the strategy is we have 2 big producing wells that are in the town. One belongs to a private citizen, the other one belongs to the town. And I think I mention it in the category, and what I state that with is that they have 650 gallons per minute, and the larger one that belongs to a private citizen is 950 gallons per minute. Now, why we can't use those wells is they have arsenic in them. And so we rose the discussion about arsenic and how do we remove it. So recently, within the last 2 or 3 months, we've had the Missouri Water people talk to us. We have had a group that came out of Iowa who Jerry, our maintenance and sewer engineer, basically talked to. And essentially what they are seeing is that maybe we can put together a plant that will remove the arsenic from that water. This is going to be a very expensive project, and it won't happen right away. This leads us into the discussion about the sediment. That's what we started with when we applied for this grant. And the sediment is basically built up underneath the bridges so far that you can't even get a human on one of the bridges to crawl underneath the bridge.
Was that because of flooding?
It was flooding, yeah. In Keystone, you guys, the water comes down at such a rapid rate. That's what happened to it in the 72 flood. And if you look at our society today, everything is in extremes. We don't have anything in the water right now or in the creek right now. But within, like if you get 3 inches, that creek will rise right up. It goes very, very quickly up, and it deposits all of this sediment. The only reason I know about sediment is we own Big Thunder Gold Mine, and so basically DANR does not want you in the creeks if you're creating sediment. And so we no longer can pan in the creek. We have to have a separate facility because the sediment, this is a fishery of Battle Creek that goes through. So they have tons of rules that you have on a fishery. And right now there's hardly any fish in the creek, and it's due to the storm sediment that is in that creek, and it's building up inside. They measured the actual sediment, DANR, and it was about 1,000% more sediment in there, which could be causing the fish to die within the stream itself. Why do I mention that to you? The sediment, yes. According to DANR, if I did a grant through DANR, they won't accept it. I just asked her before I started the grant so I could get an honest feeling from her. They perceive that the sediment is maintenance and that the city should be digging that out. Well, it'd be great if we could dig it out and afford to dig it out, but that's where the problem comes because of all the permitting procedures that it takes. And we've already began the procedures of going through our engineer, who has given us a bid of $34,000 to actually do all the permitting and the planning for that to be dug out. And we have to decide how much needs to be dug out. Well, once you get it out, and I know some of your concerns are that that doesn't match your mission statements, but every agency that we have talked to, DANR, FEMA is saying because we lost this thing on the big grant process, now we have to start from the beginning. So we're not able to clear those beds out, and only one of those beds can be cleaned out, but it's going to be 3 years before that process takes place. I guess I considered this an emergency to get it out. Every agency that Black Hills Council has approached and our granting process has approached have said it wouldn't match their mission statement. And that's what I was saying to Dan, is we're kind of at a loss at this point, because how are we going to afford to get that out? Right now, if we got a heavy rainstorm, the entire Winter Street would be flooded out. And that ruins your businesses, which you cannot get tax dollars. We're all dependent on that money. Just like you guys are dependent on there, but we have no city property tax. That was because our community is 61% in the poverty level. They can't afford it. And so it's a plight that we're having to deal, and I guess when I tried to lay this out with your mission statements, we have talked about erosion, but we can't do erosion repair or prevention of erosion unless you get the sediment out. It's one's contingent on another. And we're very willing to go in and work with conservation. We were going to have to do that and start telling the businesses, unless we get another source of water, then we're not able, they're going to have to take and wash their laundry in these big hotels a certain limited time. Because we're an unusual community that only has 240 people, but we got 150 businesses that are impacting our sewer plant at this point. And it's at the max. And we have lines that are there since 1980s that have not been replaced and need to be replaced. And of course, the town itself did not even become a community until the day after the flood, which was 1972. So it was not a municipality. It didn't have any organizational things about it. And what I guess I'm just trying to say in here is that we have approached. We're going to pay for the engineer, which is $34,000. To me, it seems like a lot of money to have to pay for going in and getting the permitting and the leveling out of what you need to do in those bridges. But the sediment is like gravel, and it's plugging all of the bridges that are on the main street down below. One of those is DOT, and I've already talked to Ron Zucker, and he has put it on a high priority. They are going to dig out one of the bridges. So the 3 bridges that I had made application in here, one of them will be taken care of by DOT. So we did manage to do that. I guess the reason for talking to you is that I don't know what else to do. We have other plans about trying to get more water, but everything is oriented right now around the quality of water. We cannot touch the creeks due to the FEMA project. We're remapping our entire community, and we cannot change anything unless it's underneath the bridges. But they said they can't do any of that unless it's involved in the actual grant process. And the big grant process got delayed on this one, and now we're not able to get the grant, and we have to wait until that whole project is completed, which they're saying 2 years at the earliest before we'll be able to do anything. So we're kind of stuck between a hard place and a rock, you guys. And I guess I'm just coming to you. I know it doesn't match exactly, but we're trying. And I guess if you have any questions, you sure can ask, and I'll try to answer it the best that I can.
Have you contracted with the engineering firm,
With who?
with the engineering company?
Oh, yeah, we have our own city engineer.
No, I'm talking
Except
about
we
the
have
consultant.
A2ES.
Yes.
Yeah, they're the ones that are
And
contracted.
you're under contract with them?
What's that stand for?
We've had them in the past. We have two engineers right now. We have state engineering, and we have this old one from AE2S, but they were too expensive for us. But they have all the FEMA work and maps, and so we felt like we had to go through them in order to contract it, and that's why it is $34,000. They're a high firm, but they do it right and they get it done. And they're changing our maps so we don't have as much of the property in the flood zone itself. Okay.
So when do they have to complete this work? I mean, what's the time?
There's no timeline on
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yeah, so they actually will hold us to this and hold the bid on this, so we're hoping they say what they're going to do. Not everybody will produce a bid nowadays and then it cancels within 30 days. It's really tough on any kind of vendor. But they told us that they would carry this through.
Is there any questions for Sandy from the board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Scott.
I got a number of them. What does an opt-out community mean?
Okay, a lot of people don't know what it is.
I don't.
Because the community is so poor, and people that go through our town always think, oh, they're not poor, they got all these buildings and businesses, but the residents are very poor. They can't afford the taxes. In fact, we're joining Julie Fry-Mueller on the taxes because they're going to be taxed out of their homes. So that means we don't collect any city property tax. The county, Pennington County, will give us $120,000 per year. That's it. And that's what we survive on. And
You
so
have a
then
city-
our sales tax plus
Okay.
that $120,000.
So you basically fund yourself on municipal sales tax.
Yes, right. And that's why an opt-out.
What rate is that at now?
I'll tell you what the state rate, that wouldn't say, ours is 2% and 3% that we net back, but attractions are 9%, merchandise is at 8%. So the state gets up and beyond on the rest of that. So we net the 2% and 3%.
And what's the town's annual budget right now?
Annual budget is right around 2.5 million. Okay. And yes, we have funds in a bank, but it's to pay for the two bridges that are going to cost us $6 million.
Where's the third bridge?
The third bridge is down by the Holy Terror Mine, if any of you know where that is. It's DOT and crosses Highway 40, but it's directly in town where
Okay.
the historic part of Keystone
I was
is.
thinking that was the second bridge, so where's the second bridge?
Second bridge is the 3rd Street Bridge by the Comfort Inn,
Oh.
and it's called 3rd Street. And then the first one, which is the emergency one, the one that is extremely, I mean, it can destroy that bridge, and that bridge was done 6 years ago.
That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's the one that has no outlet in there to even get through.
Why doesn't DOT accept that as a state bridge?
It's
on-
off
It's on
of-
Highway 16, right?
No, it's on our street. It's called Roy Street. So
It's
because
not-
it's on our street,
it's not over the
they will
highway.
not obtain ownership of that.
It's not over the highway.
Yeah, it's not over
alongside of
the highway.
It's just access to businesses there.
Roy Street cuts right in front of Rushmore Boat
Can't you just
Store.
move it a few feet?
That's good. I like that. I wish I could.
Finally, Mr. Chair, if I may, just a comment.
Sure, yeah, good.
Beyond our mission statement, state law requires us to comply with the purposes for which the South Dakota Conservancy District was created. That's in our statutes establishing the water districts, which is 46A-3A-1. It says part of the purpose of the district is to obtain the objectives and in the intent of Chapter 46A-2, which is the South Dakota Conservancy District. 46A-2-2 recognizes as a priority activities flood protection, fish and wildlife benefits, water quality enhancement, and erosion control. So I think state law itself answers the question that this is outside of what we can do because it is essentially flood control. It is not under the statutory scheme. It is, in fact, directly something that water districts are directed to take into account and provide for.
I think you're correct. So, any other questions from the board members? Or Dan's got a question.
I just wanted to make sure you're asking for 21,326, is that the number?
Same amount we haven't changed that at all.
And that's for the excavation.
Yeah.
And that's just our share of the overall project you're asking for, is that
Yeah.
amount?
Yeah. And I think on there, we had amended it, and I have the thing, I think it was amended to 64,000 is what we had on it.
64,936.
Yeah, and that the 21 would be your share, the rest would be the city's share.
And the city is putting up cash for its engineering expense. Who's your city attorney?
City attorney is Mitch Johnson. He's also Hermosa's as well.
Director Ron's got his
Yeah.
hand up for a
Well,
question.
it's not so much a question, it's a little bit of an interrogatory into what Director McGregor said, is that I did also read all of those statutes, and, flood protection was suggested as something that we could get involved in if we perhaps so chose to get involved with it. In this particular case, though, as identified in your application materials, this is a maintenance project because there's no real solution being suggested for the continued deposition of sediment. It's a maintenance activity, and it's really not flood protection, because at least as the way that I understand it, in that we have no idea at what level flood this will have any impact on where the water is routed. There's no suggestion of at what level, whether it's a 2-year flood that comes pretty regularly, or if it's a 5-year or a 10-year, what kind of mitigation is actually going to be accomplished by the removal of a few yards of sediment under some bridges.
And that's why I mentioned in there about the watershed, and because even in our new park plan that people are coming up with, they're dealing with the watershed itself. And that I've talked to many organizations in the town who are willing to work with the watershed component in order to prevent that from going back into the creek again. And that component, I understand where your concerns are, and I'm not trying to argue. All I'm trying to do is state the fact of how important this is to our community.
And I'm not trying to be, argumentative either. I'm just saying that it is a maintenance activity under the current
Like
conditions.
DANR said.
And it's really, we don't understand at what level there's any flood risk reduction. It may only be a 2-year regular event. We don't really know that. So I'm not inclined to think it's a good use of our money. I mean, I feel for you, but I think you need to go and really work the DOT over. They were willing to give you the big grant, which was something I thought was pretty applicable. And FEMA is already, it sounds like, on board, with some assistance, although it isn't tomorrow. So I think you're chasing the right sources of funding, and I'm not inclined to think it's an appropriate use of our money for the purposes, the reasons that I stated.
Could I ask the question, and this is, again, I'm not arguing, I'm just saying, if we were to work with some of those wells in the removal of arsenic, would that be something that your funding would be appropriate with?
I guess we'd have to see an application. I don't want to say anything
Yeah,
until I would see an application.
Would it be a better source, I guess, or project?
Personally, I think it would be, personally, because it's water quality, and you got an arsenic
Yeah.
problem, and you're gonna have to build some
And
kind
it's
of.
a very creative process. The guy that told us about it, they're called iron balls, and iron removes arsenic from there. And you can even take the iron balls from the plant that would absorb the arsenic, and they would go to the landfill, and they're appropriate to put in the landfill. And that's the recent thing that we've been working
I
on.
think we would have to see, as Ron
Like
said,
you said.
we'd have to see exactly what you're proposing, and then you'd have to submit another application for, once
Sure.
you have your.
Once we have our
You
information.
you get your
accurate.
information from
Yeah.
engineers, what the cost estimate is and so forth, and come back with an application and see if that's something.
Okay.
I agree with what Ron said, that I think I'm struggling with this
And I
application that you have,
understand.
because
Yeah.
I agree. I think
I've
it's
learned a
maintenance.
lot in talking to people, and I've never worked with so many agencies in my entire life. And if you've ever I just got a water permit from the state water board, and boy, they just went on and on and on, and water is a huge issue right now for everyone. And
Well,
the sourcing.
Drinking water is high on our priority
Yeah.
versus the flood control project, which I don't
I
think it meets our
understand.
mission statement personally.
Okay.
So, and I feel bad for your community having to deal with all this, but
Sure.
we do have to, we have taxpayers all within our area that
Sure.
want
I
money,
understand.
and so we gotta sort all this out, so.
And you have to be accountable to who you give the money to.
My recommendation is, if you're gonna have to do something with arsenic removal, that make another application to us and see what we can do.
And we're proceeding with that project. It won't be like next meeting or anything close to that, but after the summer, we probably will get more into it, so. Okay. I appreciate you guys
We
listening.
appreciate you coming here and.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
From the fishery standpoint, what has Game and Fish said?
Game and Fish keeps dumping more and more fish in there, and they just die. I mean, last year I think I saw 2 fish in the whole fishery.
Have they said anything about the sediment under this bridge?
I haven't talked to Game and Fish, but I've went to all these committees, and that's an issue with them, not necessarily our creek, but that's an issue that they talked about in their meetings. And, yeah, I would say that it is, because we can't pan in a creek because our PD, I think it's eyes that are measured in there, are 32%, but storm sediment is 3,000%. So are we going to stop the storm sediment? I don't know. So, but thank you guys very much for
Thank you for
listening.
coming.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve a grant of $10,000 to the town of Keystone to assist with this project.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second
Is there a
it.
second? Seconded by Robert. Okay, discussion on the motion.
I appreciate the concerns of the other committee members or the other commissioners that have expressed, their opposition to this mostly as a maintenance project, which it is, but the project also seems to indicate fish and wildlife benefits, which I think the town should approach Game and Fish on, as well as erosion control. We, of course, have funded an awful lot of erosion control, over the last several years around. So I think a $10,000 assistance to the town of Keystone, would be in order on this. A greater concern I have, if it is one, is, the precedent we might be setting for having to deal with these sorts of little projects in the future. But I guess we can come to that when we see what happens here.
Question, Sandy, you were asking for 21,000, and he's got a motion for 10,000. Is that going to move the project forward?
Yes, we have no other choice but to move forward, but the rate it is this year We have some money in savings. We're at least going to have to deal with the bridge that's down on Winter Street because that destroys your revenue if it does. And this will be the year. You look at all the storms everywhere and the ones all winter. The storms, they're always in extremes. There's nothing that is just average anymore. It happens, and when it happens in Keystone, that's why it destroyed the entire community in 1972. And yes, I think it would help, and it would help move the project forward.
I would just add, Mr. Chairman, not to be spendthrift or anything, but we certainly have funds available to us and funds that are not otherwise obligated. This is not a question of, this project competing with another project we're considering.
Right. Well, Keystone is in my area, so,
I know.
yes.
I appreciate your interest, Director McGregor, but I think you identified one of the other concerns that wasn't mentioned is in my term here with the board, I don't want to be seeing flood risk reduction projects come before this board. And this is a flood risk reduction of unknown benefit. Plus it is a maintenance activity, so I don't think it's a good idea.
Any other discussion from the board members? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye. So we'll have a roll call.
Okay, did I get the motion right? Motion by McGregor, seconded by Ackerman to approve $10,000 for the town of Keystone.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Code,
I'm going to vote against the motion.
Bjorky,
No,
Driscoll,
not here.
McGregor,
Aye.
Ackerman,
Aye.
Rose not here, Mack,
Aye.
Fleming,
Aye.
Carr.
No.
That's 4-3, motion carries.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
There you go.
guys so much. I appreciate it.
Please keep us posted.
I
He's got
sure
it
will.
pinned down. You got
Yeah,
it.
Sandy, I guess, is this a check you're expecting us to write today, or?
Why don't I talk to the finance officer? And I would say it doesn't have to be written today because we don't have immediate plans. So.
And am I authorized to pay this when they
Yes.
need it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're also changing finance officers, so I will make sure that that person knows that, okay? The new one that's being trained next week, so.
Very good.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks again for coming, Sandy.
Thank you. Thanks for being patient with me, guys.
Well, the next item.
Bye-bye.
Anything, are you ready, Dennis?
I'm ready, I think I got a slide presentation here.
Yeah, so item number 9 is discussion on the Medicine Mountain Scout Ranch Water Source Project. My name's on it. I did have a chance to talk to Mark Anderson, who's here, and Bob Morecambe at the hydrology conference about this project, and I invited them to come down and tell us a little bit about your project and what you're here for. Mark Anderson, can you identify yourself for the record?
Mark Anderson, I'm an adjunct professor at the South Dakota School of Mines, but here representing the Black Hills Area Council of the Boy Scouts. I'd like to introduce Mike Lewis. Mike is on the executive board and has the power to make these kinds of decisions. You mentioned Bob Morecambe. He is also on the board and has responsibility for the facilities at Medicine Mountain Camp. So we've partnered on this and worked closely on this for the last 6 months. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to the chairman and to the rest of the board members for considering this water development project. And I put together a few slides to maybe, I know that there's a thick packet there, there's a lot of words and a few illustrations, but I have a few illustrations here that maybe will make it easier to understand what we're trying to do. So an overview, first of all, I just wanted to explain kind of the existing camp water supply situation. I'll take it a few minutes. talk about the water rights that we have in place for the Boy Scout camp, and then briefly reviews the alternatives that we've already considered. And the obvious thing would be to drill another well. It was my recommendation that another well probably isn't going to produce any more water than the other well they have. Exact same situation that Keystone explained. Wells into this hard Precambrian rock, you just have to, get lucky and find some fractures and stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. We could pull water from Lake Alexander. A real problem with that, though, is we'd have to put in an actual treatment system, plus we right now don't have a water right for that. And if you were to go to the state for a water right for surface water, I'm pretty sure they'd reject it. That leaves us to refurbishing our existing infiltration system. And I have some figures on what that is. The system only is 4 inches in diameter. We'll talk about that in a second. Review briefly the design and construction plans, and then review what our efforts were to secure some financing for this project. We approached USDA rural water programs, and this one could fit, but they couldn't be clear about, what funds would be available and what time schedule and that sort of thing. Plus, for some of you, I guess for Dan Driscoll's benefit, if he was here, he would appreciate the situation with Section 106 of the Historic Preservation Act. If you have federal funds, even on private land, you have to go through consultation with tribes, and that's a thing that's an unsure outcome. So we kind of dropped that. As you know, you have the packet. We have applied to the state water plan. That's a 2-step process. The first step is to get on the state water plan, but that doesn't ensure you funding. There's another step in which you have to secure funding. So we've made application for that. We've been told, however, by Mike Perkovich, who administers this program, that they would probably look at this as a low priority project for them. And that's part of the reason why we're here, is the reason it's a low priority, they kind of consider it a recreation facility, and we take issue with that. It's really not a recreation facility, but they like to have their money going to municipal water supplies. So anyway, but where we stand today with that, we are eligible to be included in the state water plan, but we have been told that it would be a low priority. So we may know by July whether or not it'll be accepted onto the state plan. And then we've had preliminary discussions with West Dakota. Next one, Dan. A little bit small, but if you want to know where the Boy Scout camp is, if you've never been there, on the bottom of the screen is Custer, and
The window probably doesn't help.
well, you get an idea. This is Custer, this is Hill City, there's the Boy Scout camp. It's about 11 miles northwest of Custer.
Where's Lake Alexander?
Pardon?
Where's Lake Alexander?
Oh, it's on the property. It's the next slide, I think, that advances that.
I guess that's as far as anything else.
So, this is Lake Alexander. It was created, this facility, by the way, was created in 1975. If anybody's been around a while, the old Boy Scout camp was called Camp Broadaxe, which is up by Nemo, and quickly the Scouts program outgrew that site. I believe this was donated land from Alexander's, right?
No, the Camp Broadaxe was destroyed in the '72 flood, and it was on a Forest Service lease, and the Forest Service declined to release it to us and rebuild. So then the council purchased this property in 1974, 1975. Lake Alexander is named after Rod Alexander. His son was an Eagle Scout and tragically died, and they made a donation, and that lake was named after the Alexanders.
Thanks. I didn't know that detail myself. So next. Again, this figure is also in your packet, and you can look at it a little more closely, but it provides the information about the entire water system. So let me point this out. Here's, in the figure in your packet, right here is a deep well. This is a 600-foot deep well, produces 3 gallons a minute. And to drill another one, we probably would get the same result. We'll show you the geology of that area. But there's not, yield isn't the only problem. The other problem is iron, and as Sandy pointed out, it's a pretty good chance it's going to have arsenic in it too. So that's a problem. Here, there's a little building here. You can see we have a shallow well there. It's only 20 feet deep, but it has laterals that are connected. 100 feet of lateral, but only 4-inch diameter perforated pipe. So it's created an infiltration gallery right along Spring Creek. It's actually not unlike, Girl Scout gallery. It's an infiltration gallery along the creek.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Where is this arsenic coming from?
It's natural.
It's natural. And
Natural.
It's natural, yeah.
the most likely mineral form is arsenopyrite. It's a form of pyrite. Instead of iron pyrite, it's arsenic pyrite. And that's the indicator, by the way, of they look for gold up at Homestake, arsenopyrite. But anyway, so I'll go to the next one, I guess. So that's the 20-foot well. Looks like it's a really good well, but it's only 20 feet deep. I'll go to the next one. This is the geology in the area. I won't bore you with exactly where it is, but these are really hard rocks. These are quartzites, metagraveros, and so forth. And we're pretty sure that drilling another well would just produce a very low yield. Okay, the next one. So I got to digging into this, and I found out that my predecessors on this were pretty smart people. So they put in an infiltration gallery, 100 feet long, parallels Spring Creek. We have the water right for it. It's permitted for 20 gallons a minute. The best we can get out of that system right now is about 5 gallons per minute. We don't know for sure if some of that lateral was collapsed or if it never did produce very much water. But our plan is to, and we've gotten this cleared with the state, that we can, as long as we stay within the aquifer that we're permitted for, we can make these modifications. So,
I got a question on the aquifer there. Where you're proposing this 24-inch additional flat collecting water, has the alluvium been identified in that area by test board or anything?
yeah, I've got a picture here, I think, coming up. Anyway, the next, so, I know it's a little far away there. But,
Yeah, I can see.
the alluvium is right along Spring Creek.
Spring Creek.
And this was a measurement made in last November, and it's only about static water level is only about 3 or 4 feet below land surface. So that would be what we're proposing, to basically go in with an excavator, just create a trench, provide some sideboard collapse, and just lay a much larger diameter perforated pipe.
Are you going to replace the existing 4-inch?
We
just
rip
leave
it
it?
out. Just rip it out.
You'll tear it
Oh,
out?
rip it out, okay.
The advantage of the larger diameter is, of course, it gives us more surface area for infiltration to come into the pipe, but also it gives us more subterranean storage. In other words, we would have, if with what we're proposing to do, we would have on the order of 2,500 to 3,000 gallons of water sitting there, which is helpful for fire protection.
How deep is the trench where you go now?
We would take it down to bedrock, but we know from other drillings, the alluvium is never more than about 20 feet deep.
About the same deep depth as the well.
Right. So next slide. So this is what we're proposing to do. I know you can't see the details, but it is in your packet. This is that existing 20-foot well that is hooked into what is now a 4-inch perforated pipe. Exactly where we put the 140 feet or so perforated 2-inch or 2-foot pipe will depend on what happens when we excavate it. But we're basically going to hook into the same well, this main well that's only 20 feet deep. So the next one. So this is what the excavation would look like. Of course, we would have trench protection on it. Basically just take an excavator, dig a trench, lay the materials, backfill with some gravel over the top of it, and probably quite a bit of tight flushing. I think I might have. Okay, so then here was our planned construction schedule. We had hoped, before we can say what our final schedule is, we need to finalize exactly the design. We need to secure a contractor. Bob Morcom has been talking to a number of them, but as far as I know, we haven't settled on them yet. Then acquire the materials, and at this point, it looks like we would try to do this work in the fall after the summer camp season is over. So, I already mentioned that we've submitted an application with the assistance, by the way, of Bill Lass. He's been very helpful with Black Hills Council. But we have no assurance that we would be successful there. So then the first thing you might ask is, okay, we've got the state water plan number is 51,000, and what we're talking to you about now is 25K. That's a big difference, and I realize that, but what is required for the state water plan is you have to have detailed construction plans prepared by professional engineers. So we had gone to KLJ and had them look it over. They came up with some numbers, and because of their engineering estimates and then with the state water plan, the soonest we could get at this would be next spring, a year from now. So they built in inflation estimates for materials. So what we said was about 25,000 to get the job done. All of a sudden, when you get everybody involved, it was 51. Well, if that's what it takes to get state water plan money, that's fine. But because this is considered a small request from the state water plan, anything under 100,000 is a small request. But one of the things we don't want to have happen is get into next year and not have the system refurbished and retrofitted. Right now, it's a very expensive venture for us in the summertime when we have maximum participation of scouts and the numbers of several hundred. We have to haul water from, I guess you get it from Custer.
Do you have an on-site storage tank? Did I read it here somewhere?
Yeah,
20,000.
20,000 gallon cistern.
It's a cistern?
It's a cistern, and the pump, the little shack he showed you on the map,
Yeah.
that's the well, and it feeds up through a pump house into the cistern, and then the cistern feeds our system throughout the camp.
Does the Boy Scouts have some money available to put into this project yourself?
Yes. The plan is what we can't raise, we'll either raise privately. We also feel that we're going to get some donation in kind through contractors, because we have 2 or 3 significant donors that are contractors. It's just a matter of lining some things up, and we just haven't made that step yet. We're dealing on the total cost right now.
Sure.
How that pieces together will be determined down the road here. But we really want to try and get this. We can't do construction during the summer when the camp is busy for safety reasons, because this area is a immediate access area in and out, and we don't want people around a construction site. So the timing is there, and we would pull all the pieces together as we approach that.
Ron, you got a question?
Yeah, I was going to follow up with that question on what possibilities there were, you know, in terms of a real budget, since you don't think you're gonna get money from the state water plant, assembling, you know, your amount of cash you're gonna put in there, you know, what past sponsors of efforts might be, and then maybe show back up and tell us what you really need. Since you can't do it until the fall anyway, and we have a couple of meetings, until you get back in.
Yeah, we were just grateful to be able to present the idea to the board at this point, recognizing that probably couldn't be a
One thing, we
final vote.
like to partner. We don't want to pay it 100%, so that's why I was asking how much Boy Scouts could put into this project.
How much what?
How much money you have to put into the project as a
How much
Boy Scouts?
Yeah.
Our board has authorized up to 25 to 26,000 right now. So we know that we can draw from our internal funding, from our endowment funding for that much without going for additional board authorization. So we know that already, but we are hoping essentially not to draw that much out if we go for donors and other grants and or, for example, from you guys. So we're willing to pitch in essentially to complete the project once we know some of the pieces that come together that we will bring to the table to pay for it.
So it sounds to me like actually I didn't see a dollar amount in here. Was there 25,000 in here somewhere?
Well, I think there was email communication.
It was just
about
Yeah.
the idea of
yeah.
you know, a simplification, because I guess 25,000 again with one vote of the board. But you know, I'm with Ron. I think, you know, I'd like to see Bob Markham here. He's the one that really put the pencil to a lot of the numbers. And so the idea of introducing this to the board today, coming back with more specific numbers, and maybe we'll have a contractor lined up by then and so forth. It's just that we were, you know, it's just an opportunity to, especially if the state water plant goes belly up.
And you're expected to hear on that when?
I think they're going to meet in July.
They'll tell us if we're going to be on the water plant, accepted onto the water plant in July, but there may not be a funding indication until as late as September or December. And that even could put it into next year. But we were told that if they do some funding, it can be retroactive to assist us.
You'd like to do the project either this fall or next spring before camp opens?
Our optimum would be this fall, because where it's at up there, when you're trying to do that in the spring, you've got a window that's about 2 weeks long.
Are you open now?
We are opening the camp and we're charging our water system as we speak. The first week of camp is the first week.
We have 2 meetings. We have one in July and one in August.
Okay.
And then the next one is in October. So
How many scouts do you run through in a summer?
On average, scouts and adults will be in the neighborhood of 12 to 1,600 in a 5-week time frame. Our peak week will have about 600 to 700 in the 2 peak weeks, and then we have the lower. So it's a curve, but our 2 peak weeks are, and those peak weeks are when our system can't keep up, and we end up having to purchase water to bring it in.
Scouts can't take showers.
Yes.
Very critical.
I did all my camping at Lewis and Clark.
I know that.
Swam
the
in
other
lake.
question is, how are you treating that infiltration water?
Our system has a chlorinator
Okay.
built into the system, and then our camp ranger, our full-time person up there, does water testing as required by the state and submits those samples. Company of Blackhawk or Piedmont or something we use, I don't remember the name. Those samples all go through them, get analyzed, and then we maintain the results as well as submit them to the state for our system.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do we need to make a decision on this today, or was this just for discussion?
I think it's just for discussion.
It's not an action item on the
Yeah, it's not an action item. So anyway, if Bob Morgan could come to our July meeting, we can get him on the agenda. You might have more information available at that time, cost. I don't know if one of your statements in here is trying to get friendly contractors who, I hate to throw any names out there, but Bob Quinn?
I didn't know he was a contractor.
Well,
I know the name.
he's a retired contractor, but he's, School of Mines grad, did the work up there on the M. And a nice guy, he might be one you might want to ask.
Still have his PE?
Huh?
Does he still have his PE, you think?
I'm not sure about that, but,
I guess the only question that I would take back to Bob and to the rest of our board is this a project that the board here would, within your scope and something that you think that would fit if we bring all the right information back at that meeting?
personally, I think it does fit our mission statement. I don't know what the rest of the board, but water treatment, Keystone was here, they had a problem with their SCADA system a few years ago, and we actually we funded it. That was kind of an emergency too. We did fund that whole thing. I think you were on the board then, Mr. Tom, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll just, for the rest of the board, I'll just tell you, my inclination on this right now is to approve 50% of the project cost up to $25,000, whichever is less. I think this is a very worthwhile undertaking, which falls directly in line with water supply goals of our operation here.
Well,
As long as we're commenting.
we didn't have a dollar amount.
I just wanted to express my thinking.
Well, I understand that, and I think we need to have an application indicating how much they need. And we got the total project cost included. They do have a preliminary engineering report done, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we ought to wait till our July meeting before we actually vote on that. Ryan, what do you think?
July or August, depending upon when you get everything assembled and when you can, put the finger on these contractors, I know there are some past Eagle Scouts that are now new presidents of well-known companies that have been involved for many years. So I'd see what that guy that starts with an R and there's a C in the middle there somewhere can help you with.
That's one of the two that we already
Bob
have.
RC will help you.
Yeah.
RC will just do it.
Bob's call.
That's quite honestly, really? There's two contractors that are significant supporters of our council on an annual basis, and we feel that they will probably step forward, but we have to pin the rose on them to make the official ask.
Yep.
And quite honestly, we're thinking that if we can do it in the August timeframe, it probably will fit with some of their construction opportunities a little bit better than trying to jam it into a spring timeframe in next year.
Yeah, no, I think that I'd be receptive to funding some of this project, but I'd like to see the budget where you come up with all your partners.
What's your July date, do you know?
It's the second Tuesday in July.
Okay, thank you.
Has the state officially designated you a recreational use?
No, that's, we could have a discussion about that. We take umbrage at the idea that the camp is actually recreation. It's actually for training and maturation of youth. And so there's not much recreation really, especially for those people working staff.
The only recreation is that Lake Alexander is the headwaters of Spring Creek, and the Game and Fish does populate that with fish so that they flow downstream.
Your actual use here is domestic. This is basically so you got
This
water
is
for the
domestic
kids.
use. That's correct.
Yeah, so all we've been, it's funny, I talked to Mike Perkovich myself directly, sorry for one more kind of moment, and that was, would the Boy Scouts, as a nonprofit established in the state of South Dakota, eligible for state water funds? Because I read all the stuff, and sure enough they are. But what Perkovich told Bill Lass was that they would view this as a low priority.
Well, there's a lot of government procedures that you have to do, even if you get accepted, that cost money.
Sounds like a cheaper route if you can assemble the team.
I
Let's do it.
I agree with what Ron said.
That would actually be our preference.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
And
Stay out of it.
but we're trying to cover all the angles. or at least additional length.
Trying to answer the question while.
Scott,
just go to the
was that a
state.
motion you gave, or?
No,
Okay, it was just.
no, I just wanted to
discussion.
tell everybody else here what I was thinking,
Oh, okay.
because I may not be able to think the next time we gather.
Let's come back at our July meeting, we'll get you on the agenda. You'll have probably some more information that you can get to Dan for that meeting, and then we can decide what we want to do at that
We'll
meeting.
do that and we'll make it a formal request or
Yeah,
application,
yeah.
whatever format you need.
Okay,
We've got a little suggestion on our website about what a proposal needs to cover.
Yeah, I
And
think
you've
we
got
answered
all
all
that
that.
stuff, it's listed out.
Yeah.
I think I wrote out a whole.
yeah, I
every one of those.
think your
Yeah,
proposal
it's all pretty much in there.
pretty much there, what you got, just,
We just need the,
we had talked about a dollar amount, so I didn't see it in here, but I knew you were gonna be here just to give us some information today, to get it
We'll
started.
have a better dollar amount, we'll have a better need on some contractors next time, and some breakdown of how the funding is gonna work as far as package wise.
Okay, very good, thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, the next item is item
You guys
10.
signed in, right?
You're signed in. Discussion on the Dakota water releases and reservoir management for fish, wildlife, flood cost mitigation and recreation. And Director Care is, he cares. Yes, that's your item.
You're starting to get bad habits from our executive.
I know it. I apologize.
I apologize for getting it wrong.
Well, I kind of put this out, and Dan mentioned that maybe this is just a director's subject, but basically what I thought we ought to do is kind of update people with what we've done recently. This overall problem is basically the inability of the facilities at Dakota Dam to be able to release water between about, below 35 CFS in any increment, any amount. And it's been that way since they constructed the dam in 1856 and since it filled in 1962. So they're just operating with kind of these problems that continually come up. So we had a meeting with Reclamation here last week with their grants coordinator and several other folks to talk about what might be available for grants. And there are some things coming up that would be grants for either technical support for modeling for the reservoir, so we'd be able to tell what are the impacts of these various releases and what would be available in greater detail than we've currently got it. And then the other thing is to be able to put together a grant, to be able to put together kind of a cooperative working group that would talk about all the different interests and include people from the different interests. That it's quite a list of Reclamation has for that kind of thing. But so we kind of have a steering committee, if you will, or a group that would be able to react to the outputs of the model and say, well, we like that reservoir elevation, we don't like this reservoir elevation from those kind of releases, and just be able to kind of fine tune and get the model and the expectations of the reservoir kind of into the same, I guess, understanding. So those grants, we intend to pursue some of that. One of the other things we need to do, and I think it's pretty fair to say we're driving this, but we need to get with the city of Rapid City and talk to them and find out, are they supportive of this? What's their feeling of the issues, and that's probably with their public works director.
Yep.
And just make sure we've got them on board. There may be some other players that we want to get on board. We know we've got game fishing parks on board, and anyway, so there's things like that that are going on. We've also got a meeting this week coming up with Bar Engineering to talk about possibility of what would it cost, or what would happen if we had a private consultant develop this model. Reclamation obviously would like to do it, but they're probably 2 years out, I think is what they said, Dan.
Yes.
And our interest is maybe sooner than that if we can. So one of the things we talked with one of their representatives of BAR who was at the Black Hills hydrology study and found out that, well, they do have the capability to do this kind of thing. They've got a former reclamation employee that's now on their staff that could be very valuable to us. And so we're going to have discussions with them this week on the model and just kind of what they see and how you proceed with this. So those are things we're doing. I don't know, Dan, you want to add?
No, I think that pretty well summarized it. It was a 2-hour meeting that we had.
Oh, did it break up when I left? Because I left at 2 hours.
Well, we finished, we wrapped it.
My
Since you
phone-
were there, we wanted to wrap it up.
My phone was out of battery.
But a lot of information that was provided both on their side and our side, and they're well aware of the issue. But they don't have anything scheduled to do anything with the valve system that's up there now, so.
Well,
Go
let
ahead.
me speak to that.
Right.
Because they built this thing in 1956. It filled in 1962. They did that FONSI in 2000 to kind of reorder what they would make releases. They didn't do anything then. They contracted in 2007, and they didn't do anything then. And unless we push this, they won't do anything now.
That's probably true. Yeah, they don't have anything on their schedule to do anything, really.
What's the relationship and management between BOR and the city?
The city has a storage contract for storage in Pactola and in Deerfield. So, and they're the largest water user too, for water coming.
But they have no hands-on management.
Well, there's a dam tender that takes the water orders for Rapid Creek drainage, you know, what comes down the Rapid Creek, for all the water users that have water rights to that, whether it's natural flow water in Rapid Creek or storage water, which is in Pactola and Deerfield. The city there's 55,000 acre feet of water when it's full storage in Pactola. The city has 49,000 acre feet under contract, and then there's 6,000 acre feet that's set aside for the fishery, wildlife, recreation. And so one of our issues, recently was how they're actually, managing that 6,000 acre feet.
Is the dam tender a BOR employee?
City employee, but under
City employee.
under the guidance of the Bureau of Reclamation.
Can he release waters when the city needs them? Does he have to get
He
BOR
takes-
approval?
There's people that have water rights to it, call the water dam tender up there based on what their daily needs really are, and then they release the amount of water that needs to be released. And so Deerfield, there's 15,000 acre feet of water, stored water in Deerfield. The city has 7,000 acre feet of water, and the 8,000 is the downstream irrigators, Rapid Valley Conservancy District. So that's all the stored water up there in the basin.
So the federal government owns the reservoirs. The water is stored under allocations of volume, with state water rights that operate that on the releases of the natural flows. Releases of the stored volumes come from the federal government, basically for water user orders. So you've got the federal government in there that determines the storage releases. You've got the state that determines the natural flow releases, and then by the natural flow releases, how much water can be stored in the reservoirs. And then you've got the city as the dam tender, who's basically just pulling the levers up there and either turning the water on and off.
And then just to throw a twist in, once you reach the flood pool elevation, the Corps of Engineers takes over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in Pactola. There's a flood component
Flood pool, yeah.
to that.
But
That's why they raised the dam.
Not in Deerfield, but in Pactola. That's why they raised the dam.
How often does that happen? Has it ever happened?
Frequently.
Yes.
Frequently, really?
Frequently. When we see these big flows of 200 to 500 CFS for some indeterminate length of time in the springtime, that's in reaction to the conservation pool getting into the flood storage pool. And then they dump that water.
Whether anybody needs it or not down below.
They dump it because it's supposed to be below the elevation that's identified, in that flood storage.
They
There's a
want
whole
to
other topic
evacuate
to discuss there.
that water that's in the flood part of it as fast as they can.
Well, their criteria, depending on how much water's in the flood pool, is how fast they have to release it.
Yeah.
So the more water that's in there, the faster they have to release it.
Did the Black Hills land settlement with the tribes include Indian water rights?
No.
Although when we did the storage contract, they had representatives at the table on the renewal of the first 40-year contract. When they had to renew that, there were people representing the tribes at those meetings.
And
Conceptually, there could be unquantified native water rights, but there's also unquantified Forest Service water rights. So that's another tangent.
Which was developed first, the reservation or the forest?
Well, the Organic Act for the forest was probably after, there was no reservation in the Black Hills.
1868 Big Sioux
Yeah.
Treaty, the Great Sioux Nation was designated all of western South Dakota.
Okay, but that's officially been settled, but they just didn't take the settlement. Yeah. I don't know if there's quantified water rights for the tribes.
Probably not.
I think the water rights on the Missouri River still are.
They're still in flux.
They're still in flux. They are. So
these tribes haven't quantified their water rights.
no, they haven't.
They've not.
They have not. No. So in our lifetime around here, I don't think we need to worry about it. But
I think that's right.
anyway, it was a good meeting and good start, I would say. And then, like Craig said, we're going to meet with the representative from Bar Engineering Thursday morning and find out maybe more about the modeling and other things too.
Yeah, it's kind of just a brainstorming session with these folks from Bar. One of them is the retired chief of dams for the Bureau of Reclamation. He's come on to Bar in the last year or so. And one of them is he's a PhD PE, and he does a lot of this kind of water balance modeling, particularly with hydrology. And then there's another gal that would be involved with reservoir modeling. So just to kind of do some brainstorming on the scope of a project that would be required, so that if we do end up trying to write grants, that we aren't just shooting in the dark.
The other thing that we're talking with the Bureau is they have a list of consultants that that are approved to do work as consultants, like modeling or other things too. So there is a list of approved consultants that they have that we can.
Yeah, there's an IDIQ list always for various regions.
Yeah.
I can't. Well, they'll tell us if Bar's on this region's IDIQ or not,
Yeah.
or whether it's on the core one or what.
They were going to get that to us, weren't they?
They were. I haven't asked them yet.
Okay.
It'll be a week. Tomorrow?
Yeah.
And so that's when the
That's
request will
new
go out. I always
news.
give them a week. Then every other day after that.
All right, let's move on to 11.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick
Sure,
question?
sure.
To Director Kerr, is this model similar to the Rosemary Squillis thesis? Or
More detail. Much more detail.
It's a better model, okay.
Well, the model that Rosemary used is HEC-RES-SIM,
Yes.
and that is one of the accepted models that both the Corps and the Bureau use for reservoir simulation. But the missing component is the hydrology that feeds that model. Rosemary just used basically the period of record, and then she iterated all kinds of different kinds of operational scenarios. But there was no live hydrology feeding that. So that's the missing component that has been brought forward by the city in the past, as well as, everybody that really wants to know how this works as a predictive tool.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on to item 11, future listening session on water issues, and that's Craig's item 2.
Well, I guess I mentioned that to Dan too, and we talked about a listening session or something that would, just let us hear issues that all our various constituents have. And I don't know if that's something we want to pursue. this summer, this fall? I thought we had to kind of keep it in front of us.
This is up to the board, whether if they want to have another listening session. We've had a couple of since I've been on the board, and they're pretty. It kind of gives all the water users a chance to sit around the table and basically tell everybody what they're doing as far as water issues and water development or whatever they're working on. So
I got the impression they're pretty productive, and
they are productive.
You know, it kind of gives us a sense of is everybody coordinating, and
Yeah.
are we headed the same
We've had
direction?
representatives from Bureau of Reclamation, of course, and the city, and some of the municipalities were there. I think, did you go to those two, Barry? Yeah, Barry was there. Who else was there? The Forest Service had people there. DANR had people there. I mean, people that are in the water business. We sent notice out to a lot of different organizations, and not only just, you know, in our area, just the Black Hills, kind of the Black Hills region, really. Yeah, I thought they were very good. And then we did have some speakers too, but we wouldn't necessarily need to do that. We could just go around the table like we did last time and find out what people are working on, or thinking about water quality, water treatment, whatever's on their mind, whatever they're doing. So, is that something that the board would be interested in doing again?
I'd be interested in doing it again, and prior to the legislative session, so maybe early November.
Yeah, I think June would be a little rushed. What you think, Dan? Try to get something put together in a month.
Yeah, well,
I'd be pushing it, I think.
might be pushing it for people planning, yeah.
Yeah, I think having it in fall sometime would be probably better in this, where we are right now, time-wise. But I think that's something we should pursue.
I think it's a good idea, and I think a little bit later in the fall. Usually we've had these last two in June.
Yeah.
November might be interesting, especially with most of the field work in the summer. We may get some different faces from the same organizations
Yeah.
come in, and maybe we can see where they're at and where they want to be in the next year, even though it's a little bit past the fiscal year for some governmental agencies, but it would provide a different look, and maybe different concerns could be addressed,
Okay.
or ideas.
Well, let's just make a note of that, and we'll get going on it. Any other comments on that? Items from me, a couple things. I think you all heard, we were trying to negotiate with Black Hills Council of Local Governments to have them take over the administrative program for our group, for our organization, and everything was going along pretty good, we thought. And then on May 1st, we got an email from Jennifer Sitzman. She's the executive director for the Black Hills Council. And I don't know, did everybody see that email or not?
No.
Basically, it says, gentlemen, unfortunately, we have decided that we do not have the capacity to take on managerial duties for West Dakota Water Development District at this time. We were hopeful that we could restructure workload within the office to make this partnership work with West Dakota Water Development District. However, after deeper consideration and reevaluation of my staff's workload, even with, in parentheses, even with restructuring workload and adding additional days to their contracts, end of the quote there, we have determined that there is simply not enough time/capacity within our organization to ensure, number one, we can adequately fulfill the duties of the West Dakota Water Development District, and number two, the quality of our services to our members doesn't decline. And so, anyway, she just said they're happy to continue to have a conversation with us about pairing projects that fit our mission with their grant programs. I apologize for any inconvenience or delay this may cause in finding Dan's replacement. And it's signed by Jennifer Sitzman, the executive director. So that's where we are.
Yeah, we had asked for 500 hours maximum, based on sort of Dan's current operational proposals, so that was what we had asked for. and they thought that was reasonable. And then on April 27th, they had a board meeting, and then we got this email on May 1, so something dramatically changed in the context
And
of
we
that
were
board meeting.
offering $50,000 to it?
Pardon?
We were offering $50,000.
500 hours at $75 an hour.
Which is 37,000.
So that would have been 37.5 or something
yeah.
like that.
And Jennifer, when we sat, across the table from him, she thought that was a reasonable cost per hour. She thought that was in the ballpark at that time.
Yeah, she gave us all this information about how they charge people and whether they're members or non-members or the state or whatever. And however magic happened, that $75 was the right number for another state organization, or how they charge state organizations. So it was the right number to use for planning. And our request, she thought, was reasonable. They were going to put on a gal who was going to share the work with her basically 1 day a week. And we haven't had a chance to follow up with her yet to find out the real details of what that sort of generic email means yet. But I guess in the worst case, depending upon what Dan decides to do in terms of real, retirement or not, we'll have to generate an RFP with, a specified number of hours and all that kind of good stuff here in the future.
The other thing that's ahead of us, Dan was going to work through July, and then our lease at the garage is due, and it's going to go up to $500 a month. Dan checked with her to find out if we could go month to month, and the response was we'd have to sign up for another year. Was there 45?
Well, the lease is for a year, however, with a 45-day notice, we can get out of the lease.
Okay, yeah.
It's almost like we can just go a month to month, but,
Yeah, so
So there's a lot of stuff to invent or reinvent or retrace again, A leased space may even be part of that discussion, given the amount of foot traffic we really see. We may need just more, storage of some of our historical items, because I think Dan uses mostly computers, don't you?
right, but there is a lot of, you mean for the day-to-day stuff? Yeah, I don't need to get to the hard copies very often,
Yeah.
except for the files.
So we may be able to find some solution out there that doesn't involve a leased space going forward, depending upon how this all shakes out. We were going to move our stuff over to Black Hills Council, but right now that's not happening.
yeah, and we were going to use their conference room for our meetings, and not continue our spot at the garage.
I don't really know what happened. I met with Jennifer and who's it,
Lizanne, is that what?
And everything seemed fine. The only concern they had was they didn't really want to get into an billing like 15-minute increments, and I said, well, I'm pretty sure you could work something like that out.
Yeah, we met with him at the hydrology conference, and we had ironed that out. We said, okay, we'll just bill you monthly. And she said, that's great.
Yeah.
Then just
So
bill
I
us
don't-
monthly.
Yeah, I guess I'm at a loss too. Jennifer left me a voicemail before that email came out, and I tried calling her back, but I didn't get through. Legally, I think we're required to have some kind of office where we can post our agenda before meetings, and people, have some physical location they can go to if they want to request something. We don't have to be there all the time, they would have to contact me or whoever and get it.
Maybe we can figure out something at that new DANR building, and going forward, because that's kind of one of our connections. In terms of posting and hosting and all that good stuff.
Well, we are a state agency, sub-state agency,
I was
so.
just wondering, as I was reading through Keystone's application, whether they thought they would end up with a bunch of conflicts of interest if they're going to represent groups or be involved in groups requesting money from us at the same time that they were administratively managing our operations. I saw their name on one of the
Yeah, applications for,
Was it for the scouts? So,
Scouts, yeah.
So I wondered if they thought that would just create too many possible conflicts of interest.
We
We've
don't
been
know.
talking with him for over a year now, so.
Yeah, it
we
never came up.
heard any of that.
Our discussions with him never came up at all.
Hmm.
I mean, we were heading right down the right path, and all of a sudden, we get this email. It's like we were just really surprised that this thing fell through.
Yeah, maybe the geological survey or somebody up there has a corner that we could,
Well, I think the DA&R's got a brand new building out there by Lowe's.
yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be a place I'd start looking right away, I think.
That's probably a good
I think we
idea.
gotta talk to Joanne. We need a
Yeah,
cubby
where's
hole.
Joanne?
I don't know, but we need a cubby hole out there instead of renting, regardless.
That's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're a state agency. There's no reason. I mean,
Yeah,
and we deal in the same stuff as they do.
yeah, I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we ought to. Do you think Joanne would be the one to talk to, or where do we start?
Well, there's probably some facility.
She'd have to
Oversight
pass it up.
person, but
There's
she's
probably
a-
some sort of, well, the Bureau of Administration would have the control over the place.
But she could help us maybe figure out who the right persons were to talk to,
Yeah.
maybe.
She'd be a good one to start talking to her. So maybe we ought to talk to
Well, the
her.
Black Hills Conservation District is in with somebody else up on Stumer Road.
They're with the they're over there on that's
That's
USDA.
Yeah, the
USDA
NRCS.
office.
Yeah, NRCS is in there with them. Yeah, and FSA also.
Yes. So
Yeah.
well, I think that's a good idea.
Farm Service Agency.
Oh,
I think we would
no, but they're where, at what location?
They're over on
off of Fifth Street
on
off
Stumer
of Fifth
Road.
Street, kind of down there, but too close to the Catron Boulevard.
But the DA&R is a pretty close link with our kind of stuff.
Yeah, that would fit us better, I think. Actually, so.
Speaking of which, we ever gonna have a year when Fifth Street is not being reconstructed? Ever since they finished it, every year.
No, there's
I thought that was Omaha.
That's
Doing
Omaha.
something.
Omaha's pretty much done, I think. Knock on wood.
Well, we need to start looking at what to do.
I guess as far as my point of view, that July is not necessarily a hard stop. That is mainly coinciding with the office. I thought it'd be a convenient, but I think we can talk about if you want me to continue on in some fashion, whether we stay there or not.
Would you be amenable to the, like, if we did cut a deal with the DA&R, I mean, to go there instead of going to the garage? Make
Yeah,
any
I know.
difference?
Probably, where are they at again?
North of the old mall.
Yeah, that
That new building by Lowe's?
would.
Yeah, it's out by Lowe's.
I go to
North.
Lowe's a lot anyway.
It's east of there. a ways.
Or off of Fifth Street, maybe we could rent a booth at the Pizza Ranch.
Get more traffic.
We could put a billboard up there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're on the record saying that, because I was
Well-
wondering what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And what Director McGregor said may be true. They may be worried about conflicts. I know Jake Fitzgerald in the West River Water Development District, that's Lyman Jones, and he
Yeah.
said sometimes he feels uncomfortable, kind of juggling those two, so.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we bounced this around, and she did too with Jay Gilbertson, and, he thought it was all a really good deal, and they had a similar relationship with the planning district in Watertown.
Yeah, District
So the
1.
example was there, in the past, so I guess we don't know that.
Don't really know, probably never will.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's where we are, so I guess enough said on that. The other thing I was gonna say is that, we approved $15,000, up to $15,000 to do some erosion control work up at Raider Park there by Stevens, and we started that project this week. And Dan Driscoll's kind of leading the charge on that, and he got some equipment lined up. The fellow that was we were buying the wattles and some of the erosion control stuff from. He let us use his equipment up there with a great big trailer that we could haul topsoil around. And I tell you, we got a lot of work done this week, and we still could use some more volunteers, but I just wanted to report we got started on that project, and Tom Keck, he was, with that group, he was out there working too, so we just got started, it's going good. That's all I have.
That's not as steep either.
No, it is not steep. No, it's way better. It's way better.
Pretty flat.
And Linda Harris was out there. She came out for a morning. That was nice. Are there any items from directors? Seeing none, we'll move to the admin report.
Okay, not too much. There's a gentleman who stops in the office every now and then, lives out in the Orchard Meadows development, which is 44 Elkville Road in that kind of southeast corner. And he just gives me updates on the flooding in their crawl spaces there. I guess that's what happens when you build in a floodplain. So he has 5 sumps in his crawl space.
Wow.
And he said there's at least 2 other people that have the same problem, so just a bit of information there.
Well, those irrigation ditches out there leak like a sieve, so that's
Oh, yeah.
during the summer months when the irrigation season going on. When I worked for the city, we were getting complaints. Of course, they thought the city had those irrigation dishes, which we did. But we got a lot of complaints. People were.
Is that area in the city?
Huh?
Is that area in the city?
Now it is, yes. Yeah, when I was with the city, it was not. So it was just Rapid Valley Conservancy District with 7 different irrigation ditches out there, and they leak like a sieve.
It's another Green Valley kind of situation? The water table's so high that...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their problem is they're right next to Rapid Creek.
Yeah, he said they told him it was 7 foot down, which it's not, and that the builder is out of business and lives in Minnesota now, so.
Well, that's typical.
He called the builder, and surprisingly, the builder didn't want to talk to him. I think I sent you guys an email. I started getting a bunch of calls on the Murphy ditch overflowing by Longview and 44, and finally I called the county and the city. Finally, we got through to what's the title of the guy, the ditch rider or something?
Yeah, ditch rider.
Okay. Finally, I saw a backhoe there digging it out. He got stuck. I'm not sure where the problem was. But then I also noticed driving on Elkville Road to the west of Elkville Road, there was a bunch of water there. I'm not sure why that was there, because that's above the creek, so why would that be there?
I don't know. I did get a call from somebody over in Countryside South, and they said your water lines are leaking.
Yeah.
So I had to tell her, I said, that's not us.
Countryside South is that...
I've had a couple of those.
Ever. That's a homeowners association problem out there.
Yeah.
Where does Elkville Road turn into Captain Boulevard at?
On 44,
Yeah.
right across the 44,
Really?
I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, 44. Yeah. Anything else?
There's so many streets in this town that keep changing names as you go down.
Yeah, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. Barry, what do you got for us?
Nothing really pertinent, but there's a new organization being formed. They're calling themselves the Black Hills Environmental Coalition. They may want to be a platform for other like-minded organizations like DRA and Clean Water as some kind of resource, so everybody can call on each other, get resources.
Oh.
They just want to be kind of I guess you could call it a clearinghouse. They're trying to, they call it being in a silo. You focus on your little pet projects, and you kind of ignore everybody else's, and they're trying to eliminate some of that.
Oh, okay.
They're just getting started.
Do they have an office or
They just got their name.
just got the name? Okay.
They're in the process of doing bylaws and vision statements and that sort of thing now.
Who are the principal actors?
Carla Duder and Mary Dybert, Alan Anderson, and Megan Werpy. She's associated with some national organization, and I predict she'll be in charge of this before too long. She knows what she's doing and what she's talking about, and gets stuff done.
So you have are you talking to those people?
We meet every Monday morning at Homebrew, 9 o'clock. The small group that's organizing this, and, I'm part of doing
So
that.
you're part of that too then. So you can, I was just gonna say, you can report to us on what's
If
going
they're-
on.
Yeah, if they do anything.
Yeah.
But they're not really action-oriented, I would say, because they all have other organizations they do actions with.
Okay.
They're looking for another one.
Very good. Anything else? All right. Meeting adjourned. Shoot, we didn't quite make it. I was thinking 4:45. Missed it by 5 minutes. Thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Close.